Hello, my name is Megan Varner, and I am a health and energy coach and physical therapist for individuals with POTS and chronic fatigue, helping them rebuild their energy to learn how to thrive again in their lives. I'm very passionate about helping this group of people as I have been living with POTS and chronic fatigue, along with a connective tissue disorder called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome over the last decade myself, at least to the diagnosis point. And I'm happy to say that step by step you are able to figure out how to get back to thriving in your life again and not being stuck on that sofa all day long. So the topic for this video is one that I get asked quite commonly, and before I share anything, I do want to say it's important to check in with your care team before making any changes to your rehab, and everything that I'm about to share is for informational purposes only. We're all on a different journey, and it's important to get the input from those that know you well before making huge changes. Happy to answer questions though. So drop a comment below the video, or you're welcome to email me as well at megan.varner@guidetoresilience.com. So on to the topic of the video, how to exercise after a POTS flare. I have had many POTS flares, thankfully fewer of them over the last few years after figuring some very important things out. And the flip side is that exercise is an important piece for the majority of individuals with POTS and even those with chronic fatigue to help rebuild your nervous system and your cardiovascular system's ability to adapt to positional changes. So when we have a flare and we get out of that exercise routine, we can feel a little bit lost about where to start with it. And I've run into quite a few clients that they just either totally stop and they get frustrated that they've lost all of their progress, or they jump right back into where they were before and get very frustrated with the either crashing or lack of progress, not being able to hold up to what they were doing prior to their recent flare. So I want to explain a little bit about what happens when we exercise. No matter who you are, when you exercise, your body shifts into more of a sympathetic state of the autonomic nervous system. So I've talked about this in some past videos, but our autonomic nervous system has two primary states that we are designed to move between and match whatever activity we're doing or time of day that we're in. So when we're exercising, it is natural to shift into more of a sympathetic state with our heart rate increasing, our respiration increasing, we start sweating. It is, however, a draining state to stay in on a regular basis. When you're not exercising, the body shifts into more of a reparative, restorative state, hopefully for the majority of the day, called the parasympathetic state of the autonomic nervous system. So, for the average individual, we move in between those states. When you layer on having POTS or another condition that changes how your autonomic nervous system responds, we can have a tendency to be more so in a sympathetic state. So when we add on exercise, that can really magnify what's going on with our body, with the higher heart rate notably, that brings on a lot of those not so fun orthostatic symptoms like feeling like we're going to pass out, passing out, brain fog, muscle cramping, extreme fatigue, and more. So when we go into a POTS flare, we tend to shift either into more of a sympathetic state where our heart rate is higher, or like after an illness, or if we're in kind of a uber recovery mode, our body can actually go into what is termed like a freeze or a shutdown state. And when we're in this freeze and shutdown state, our body can have difficulty responding appropriately when we're trying to exercise again. So I recently experienced this after having a rough respiratory virus that ended up actually being COVID. And it has been a process of, again, learning to understand where my body is and how to rebuild it, and to keep a couple things in mind to get back into exercising so that I'm not keeping myself either more so pulled down into that freeze, shutdown state, or pulled into that extreme sympathetic state when I exercise. So the approach that I like to take both with myself and with clients is a tiered approach. The first piece is acceptance. That may sound kind of odd when you're talking about exercising, but when you're living with a condition like POTS or chronic fatigue, it takes acceptance to manage the illness on a day-to-day basis, but it also takes acceptance when we're faced with a change or we're faced with a flare, notably. I've been there and have been very frustrated with where I was, and that frustration and anger and sadness can actually shift our nervous system into more of that either shut down, freeze state, or sympathetic state, depending upon the emotions that we're dealing with. It's not to say it's all in your head, but our emotions do affect the state that our nervous system is in, and that directly affects what's going on with our physiology. So coming to a point of saying, hey, I've been sick, or hey, I had a flare for whatever reason, that's something I do quite a bit with clients to figure out their triggers and their flares to reduce them and learn how to come out of them. Very helpful, especially when you're trying to get back into exercise. But seeing, okay, something has shifted, it's okay. I can figure out where I am and move forward beyond this. So when those times do happen, kind of having a game plan and being able to tap into your self-awareness. Self-awareness is super important when you're living with POTS or chronic fatigue. I believe it's actually an element that is missing from some aspects of rehab. I definitely struggled a lot because I was not aware of the state that my body and my mind, I'm referring to more so my brain and my peripheral nervous system, the autonomic nervous system, were in on a regular basis. And there are ways to tap into what's going on, especially with certain signals of what being in a more sympathetic state or being in a more parasympathetic state, whether that being a rest and regenerative or a freeze shutdown state, or if you're just sympathetic fight flight, or if you're in awe and arousal. I've talked about that in another video that I will link below this one if you'd like to learn more information about that. However, there is a shortcut to figuring out what is going on. It is called heart rate variability. Heart rate variability, or HRV, is very easily measured nowadays on all the different types of wearable devices out there. There's different types of quality data that you get from them, but it can give you great insight into what is going on with your nervous system because it measures your neurocardiac function, or what is going on with your nervous system and your cardiovascular system and its ability to recover and shift into that regenerative, reparative state. When we're in a more sympathetic state, our HRV tends to be lower, and when we're in a more parasympathetic state, our HRV tends to be higher. Now, there are a couple nuances to it, like with the freeze shutdown state, that I work with clients to figure out. But figuring out what your recovery state is after this flare and knowing what your baseline was like before the flare, looking at your HRV, along with looking at your heart rate, I have a video I'll tag that I talked about that in before, can help you understand where your body is and where you can go in the direction of deciding how to get back into exercise. I actually offer a HRV class every month. I have one coming up again in the beginning of February. If you're interested in learning about heart rate variability in a group setting and how you can use it as a tool to improve your POTS symptoms and become more resilient, I'm happy to answer questions about that. Again, you can drop a comment or email me. But back to my stepwise approach. So you've come to a place of acceptance of where you are. You have had a flare for a reason that you've hopefully figured out so you can work through it and navigate it better in the future. You have become self-aware of what's going on with your nervous system and your body's ability to recover using a shortcut with HRV and looking at your heart rate trends. And then you come to a point of deciding how to add exercise or movement back in. This is where I like to reframe what a lot of people think about with exercise. Exercise can take a lot of different forms. It's not necessarily just what you see on something like the CHOP protocol. That protocol has great applicability. Some people thrive in it, some people struggle. I've seen both ends. I kind of fall somewhere in the middle myself. But seeing that movement in and of itself can just be movement around your house, can just be doing your activities of daily living, like getting dressed, feeding yourself, or the independent ones like laundry or unloading the dishwasher. This is movement, especially after a flare. And when you start adding up the volume of movement you're doing in a day and thinking about how much you were doing before your flare, it can be helpful to think, this is where I am right now. If just doing laundry or the dishwasher or going up and down the steps to go to bed or taking a shower is wiping you out, you need to consider that your baseline has shifted a little bit. Also comparing it to what your HRV recovery is like too. So there are ways to start doing more gentle movement. One of my favorite ways to go back into it, and part of this is from my background as a PT and also my own journey with having a lot of issues with my joints related to the hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, paired with the benefits of core and lower body exercise for POTS, is going to my floor or to my bed and doing some gentle stretching, range of motion movement exercises, and just some gentle strengthening. And again, kind of thinking a 50% approach, depending upon where my recovery is, or even a 25% approach. And this is a very individualized process. And that is why having someone like me, a physical therapist and a health and energy coach who has experience working with those that have POTS and chronic fatigue, or finding someone else in your area to give you some guidance, like a physical therapist or even a personal trainer that has experience, can really help you if you're getting stuck. But to give you some ideas for my own journey, especially recently, I like to start out by using just a little miniature pedal bike, or fancy word, lower extremity ergometer. I sit in front of a chair and do just a few minutes on, really pacing it and using some breath work to watch what my heart rate is doing. That's slowly getting back into my more upright bike, slowly getting back into portions of doing outdoor activities is typically how I do it on my own journey. But remember, we're all on our own unique journey, and we have different ways that our body responds to activity. The key is to find that sweet spot wherever you are and to not give up, because exercise is definitely still an important piece of learning how to thrive with POTS. So I have a couple of options for you if you are still kind of feeling lost and have some questions about this. First, you're welcome to reach out to me through email at megan.varner@guidetoresilience.com. You can drop a comment below this video with a question. You are welcome to schedule a free one-on-one 30-minute discovery call with me, and we can talk a little bit about where you are in your journey and learn more, if you'd like, about what it would be like to work with me to help you rebuild your energy and figure out that exercise sweet spot after your flares, so that you don't keep having crashes and have a set of steps to try the next time something like a flare happens and exercise changes. And I have the option of the heart rate variability class, like I mentioned in February, that you're welcome to check out. I will link it below this video. And I do also teach, lots of options here, a weekly mindful motion class that has a Zoom link for you to participate in. It blends restorative movement, breath work, and gentle yoga to help gently reintroduce movement into your routine. And I am there myself as a PT, and there's also an awesome yoga instructor there to give you some guidance too. So, link also for that below the video. Longer video today, but I hope it was helpful. Please reach out with any questions, and I will see you guys again in the future.